In the top stories, a tourism minister gives update on local tourism sector. St. Lucia government forgives $3 million owed in rent for NHC commercial tenants. And U.S. judge vacates convictions of men for Malcolm X's murder. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Major Newscast. Today is Friday, the 19th of November, 2021. I'm Jason Davis. Nationally, on Friday morning, Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Lindsey Grant, hosted a press conference at the Marriott Resort to update the public on the development of the tourism sector as the nation's economy recovers from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. During his presentation, Minister Grant said the future of the sector looks bright and referred to the batch of cruise ships that visited St. Kitts in the past few weeks. He also noted that the ministry expects 58 cruise ship calls in December, with almost daily calls until the end of that month, and 6 cruise ships expected on the 16th of December. Minister Grant said the influx of ships has resulted in jobs being spread around, not to just the bigger tour companies, but the smaller taxi operators as well, who are vaccinated and travel approved. On the topic of taxis, Minister Grant noted that a meeting was held with the taxi operators to discuss concerns, particularly with the dispatching system. He said the concerns were noted and will be addressed soon. In the meantime, the minister is encouraging everyone to manage expectations. Our cruises are still operating at around half capacity, and this would mean that it would take some time before the sector could return to pre-COVID levels of activity. The Department of Marine Resources is hosting a fishing tournament on Saturday, November 20, a day before the observance of World Fisheries Day on November 21. Director of the Department of Marine Resources, Dr. Mark Williams, said in an interview, quote, "The purpose of this tournament is to promote ocean pelagic fishery, which has seen the most decline for St. Kitts and Nevis in 2021, end quote. Ocean pelagic fish consists of tunas, marlin, mahi-mahi, swordfish, and wahoos. Director Williams also said, quote, "The Department of Marine Resources is looking at the fishermen to target these species. From a management perspective, when fishermen target ocean pelagic, the abundance of fish on the nearshore reefs gets a chance to rebound," end quote. He continued by saying ocean pelagic is an underutilized fishery which the department hopes that citizens of the Federation can partake in and create a market for the fisherfolk, end quote. Dr. Williams stated that the decline in pelagic fishery was due to the slowdown in the hotel and tourism sector, which accounted for the greatest demand for these types of fish. He said, quote, "However, St. Kitts and Nevis has opened its doors, and we anticipate an increase in demand for ocean pelagic, and consequently, the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries and Marine Resources desires to ensure that our fishers are prepared for the increasing demand by hosting the fishing tournament so that they can sharpen their fishing skills," end quote. The fishing competition will be held at Dieppe Bay from 1 to 8 p.m. on November 20. The Department of Youth Empowerment received high marks for Wednesday's rap session between the Minister of Youth, the Honorable John L. Powell, and 59 youth representatives drawn from high schools, youth groups, the volunteer corps, and young entrepreneurs. The interactive session was held at the St. Kitts Marriott Resort as part of activities to celebrate Youth Month 2021. In addition to a very candid and lively Q&A segment between the minister and the youth, a presentation and discussion were featured on the process to update the Federal Youth Policy 2017 to 2022 for the next 5 years. This was facilitated by Dwinette Eversley, a consultant with the Ministry of Youth. Mauriel Knight, the president of the St. Kitts National Youth Parliament Association, or SCNIPA, said he was very happy that plans were underway to revise the policy, which will guide youth development from 2022 to 2027.
Many of the concerns I would have had, like unemployment among the youth and the COVID-19 gaps that have been exposed in technology and education, I realize that the policy has been set to cover these areas, and so I'm quite confident that my expectations have been met, and I look forward to review a copy of the policy.
Alyssa Williams, a fourth form student of the Bastyr High School, appreciated the broad scope of the draft federal youth policy. The segment on education was most intriguing for the 15-year-old, who said she feels strongly that subject choices should be expanded across all classes of a form.
I was in 3G1 as well, and just because of that I couldn't do EDPM. It was not an option for me because only the lower classes could do it, so I had to do it out of school. I actually wish that some subjects they would allow us to do in school, and because of alts, how they have like the subject structured, I can't pick all the subjects I want to do because they're in the same alts, so I really wish they could help with.
Joshua Rochester, a 13-year-old, shared that crime was his main concern. He recently had a brush with a home intruder and felt passionate about the need to further bridge the gap between the police and the community. The Virchals High student credited the establishment of the Explorers Club, a partnership between the youth, community and the police, as a good way to improve relations with law enforcement. Opinions shared at the youth rap session will be included in the draft federal youth policy for 2022 to 2027. Additional concerns will be held with other stakeholders in the coming weeks. We now move to news on the regional scene. In St. Lucia, addition to a $4 million rent reprieve for residential CDC tenants, Housing and Local Government Minister Richard Frederick on November 16 announced commercial tenants occupying units owned by the Castries Constituency Council are also set to benefit from a multi-million-dollar debt forgiveness initiatives. Rehani Isator of NBC Prime reports.
Christmas came early for tenants occupying commercial and residential units owned by the National Housing Corporation, or NHC. The minister with responsibility for the NHC and the Housing Ministry, Richard Frederick, recently announced all outstanding rent up to November 1st, 2021, an estimated $4.2 million will be forgiven. The multi-million-dollar waiver benefits hundreds of families and business owners occupying so-called CDC units in the capital. Frederick, also the local government minister, on November 17th, declared to the lower house an additional 660 commercial tenants renting units from the Castries Constituency Council will also get a break on overdue rent.
We have examined persons renting from Castries City Council, and permit me to use this forum, this most august chamber, to make this announcement. All 656 vendors who are currently renting from the Castries City Council, all your outstanding debt accrued before the 1st of November this year is hereby forgiven. To be amenable to be granted such waiver, just pay rent for November and December, and from January, new leases will be executed just like we are doing at NHC.
Registered vendors throughout the capital stand to benefit from Frederick's ambitious rent reprieve initiative, also endorsed by the Philip J. Pierre-led Cabinet of Ministers. According to the housing minister, the decision to forgive the debt is rooted in the negative financial impact on NHC and CCC tenants caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. As a consequence, however, the government loses out on more than $7 million in revenue. Rehani Isidore, NBC Prime.
In observing International Men's Day on Friday, the Public Workers Union and its men's arm in Grenada are putting on a health fair for men. GBN News reports.
Noting the prevalence of lifestyle diseases among men, interim chair of the men's arm of PW, Arthur Pear, says the health fair was organized taking into consideration the expense of healthcare and men's natural unwillingness to seek out care.
A guy would tell you he okay, he all right, and then you hear he falls sick and he dies. We have lost a number of our men folk, persons who just after retirement would have died, persons even before retirement become very ill and is unable to work. So we felt that it was necessary to create an opportunity where men can come and get their checks.
Pierre says while the health fair is open to all interested men, there is a special focus on men within the PWU.
They are able to, free of cost, check issues with diabetes, all right, hypertension, check their blood pressure. We have prostate checks. We have, you can check your vision. We do have COVID. We are in the middle of the COVID issue. So we have COVID testing and vaccination as well.
The health fair is scheduled to begin at 10 a.m. on Friday and end at around 5 to 6 p.m. in the confines of PW headquarters on Port Highway. The interim chair of the Men's Arm says an afternoon educational segment will be a highlight of the men's health fair via informed discussions in various areas.
Nutrition is one, mental health another. We have herbal medicine, okay, and of course we have men's sexual health. That I'm sure would generate some interest among our men folk. So we have created that opportunity, created that space so where men can come and really and truly get an opportunity to check their health, find out exactly what's happening, if steps are needed to be taken.
The health fair forms part of PW's week, which officially commences on Sunday. Pierre says the union is seeking to make it an annual venture. I am Gerard Joseph for GBN News.
Internationally, 2 men wrongly convicted of murdering black civil rights activist Malcolm X more than 50 years ago have had their convictions quashed. Investigators found that the FBI and the police withheld crucial evidence at their trial, which could have seen them acquitted. Al Jazeera's Phil Lavelle reports from Washington, D.C.
The joint motion is hereby granted, and the record.
It has taken half a century for Mohammed Aziz to stand in a New York courtroom and hear a judge finally clear his name.
This has been an exoneration in plain sight for decades.
The now 83-year-old was convicted of murdering Malcolm X in 1966, a year after the civil rights leader's assassination.
While I do not need this court, these prosecutors, or a piece of paper to tell me I'm innocent, I am very glad that my family, my friends, and the attorneys who have worked and supported me over these years are finally saying the truth that we have all known, officially recognized.
The judge in New York vacating his conviction and that of Khalil Islam, who was also jailed for murder. But he wasn't in court, having died more than a decade ago.
The fact that my father and my mother weren't here, are not here alive to see this and to experience the exoneration is painful because they suffered a lot.
And just then the gunfire went off.
It is a case that has fascinated the US for years. Campaigners, authors, documentary makers insisting 2 innocent men were locked up. Aziz and Islam's trial was rife with misconduct and misdirection. The FBI and NYPD withheld crucial evidence, and the men had no connection to Mujahid Abdul Halim, who confessed to the shooting. Still, they would spend more than 40 years in prison between them.
For them to have had, their fingers on the triggers for the shots that killed Malcolm, they weren't in the room, simply.
Investigations took nearly 2 years and faced huge challenges. The witnesses and police officers involved are all dead, and crucial evidence like the murder weapon no longer accessible.
Mr. Aziz and Mr. Islam were wrongfully convicted, and most of the men who murdered Malcolm X never faced justice.
And they likely never will now. The question of who was truly behind Malcolm X's killing may never be answered. Phil Lavelle, Al Jazeera, Washington.
And now for the weather. Present weather is partly cloudy with slight dust haze. Winds are east-northeast from 9 to 18 miles per hour with lighter spells overnight. The temperature is 29 degrees Celsius or 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Seas are moderate with waves not exceeding 5 feet. The weather forecast for St. Kitts and Nevis says today will be partly sunny in general with periods of increased cloudiness by this afternoon with a 60% or moderate chance of brief passing showers. Tonight will be partly cloudy to cloudy with a 70% or high chance of showers. Sunset today will be at 5:35 p.m. Sunrise tomorrow at 6:18 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Jason Davis.